The magnolia that we freed from its bramble prison last year is now in flower.
Whilst this might look like some peculiar relic in a museum, it is the old bottom step. And so I've laid it all out because I need to template it. You can see the wood underneath is for the new step. And it appears that I've lost a little bit here. So I've had to put this all back together just to get it in the right place. Otherwise, I risk cutting it too small and then ruining a very expensive piece of oak. I'll probably glue the two bits of wood together because it's come in two bits with like a, I don't know what you call it, an insert that I glue, so I can glue it all together. And once that's done, I can work on cutting it out and hopefully fitting it relatively soon.
It turns out that Jane fancied to go with my big chopper, and who am I to say no? That should have read chipper. Sorry about that.
When we moved into the chateau, there were 3 substantial bushy trees blocking the view from the chateau to and from the grounds. Last year, 2 of them were cut down and the branches were dragged away, but the 3rd one was the most daunting, being mostly a giant bramble thicket. Taking that down was very satisfying, but was waiting for the chipper to finally clear away the debris. This is a huge step forward towards creating our new chateau garden.
Well, it's a beautiful day today. We're hoping for 20 degrees, which is really good for early March. And today I'm hoping to cut this out. It's the new bottom steps. So overnight I left it to glue so these can come off now. But before I cut it out, Jane happened to say, why don't you make a template out of cardboard to make sure it's exactly right? And I hadn't thought of that. And that's a really good idea. So I'm going to make a template out of cardboard before I cut this incredibly expensive lump of oak. It makes far more sense than just going at it like I was going to. That's why she used the brains.
Fortunately, the chateau has a skill for accumulation and we're never short of cardboard. This was a packing box bought, but never used by the previous owners.
I think this is pretty much going to work. So I think what I've templated onto the wood, I think is pretty accurate. So there's a little question mark over whether I'll have to chop a bit of brick out here or whether I'll notch the wood. But I suppose I won't know the answer to that, what's best, until I've cut the wood out, and I'll see. Because I'd rather leave as much wood as possible to make it just a flat surface without there being knobbles and notches here and there. So over at this end of my templated oak, whilst it basically follows the line perfectly along here, this is the separate bit that, and there was a gap here. So I'd had to sort of try and do an educated guess over where this went. I think I got it slightly more accurate on the cardboard, and you can see that there is a difference. It's not massive, but it's enough. At this end of the step, it's you can see the line that I've drawn is because quite a lot of the end of the step was rotten. So this bit, this little section here, I think is closest to what was the original line and the right angle. So I'm going to more or less cut a straight line along here as best I can and see where that leaves me. And, you know, if I need to cut it down, I will. If I don't, I won't. But if I start making these slightly more sharp and neat, these edges where I need to cut them, hopefully I'll I'll get back to as close as possible to what the original step would have been instead of what it is now, what's left of it.
Whilst I don't mind using a jigsaw, this one, which was the most expensive one I could afford at the time, doesn't cut straight. I always have to hold the tool at a slight angle, but it's the best I've got and it should do. I plan to round off the edges so the jigsaw only needs to get me into the ballpark. As luck would have it, the blade snapped as I finished the last cut. Sliding the new step into position was a good feeling. It's been a long road to get to this stage. Whilst far from completed, it's a step in the right direction. Welcome to Jane's Find of the Day with Jane.
Hello and welcome to this week's Find of the Day at Chateau de Pican. And yes, it is cold today, so I'm wearing the ski suit. I'm not ashamed, I'm comfy and cosy. So this week I'm talking about this picture. I'm standing quite close to the camera because it's in a loo, so there's not a lot of space. It's taken my interest a few times, obviously, but I only sort of looked at it in great detail yesterday. It is signed. So it's undeniably by a Canadian artist called Toller Cranston, who's pretty interesting. He's died now. He died in 2015, born in 1949, and he was a highly regarded and very successful figure skater. He was on the Canadian national team during the 1970s. He won bronze medals at World Skating Championships and also bronze medal at the Olympics. And he took his ice dance show to Broadway. So he was it must have been amazing. I haven't watched him, must have been an amazing performer. But at the same time, he had this artistic, visual artistic side to him. And I guess he probably was able to devote more time to it when he hung up his skates. This one's dated 85, I think. So I guess this was in his heyday, post-skating. And I think it's an original. It's hard to be absolutely sure, but as far as I can tell, when he did some print runs, they would typically be signed in pencil and they would typically say, for example, 89 out of 200 or something like that. So this one has an ink signature. It says Toller 85. So it's probably original. In terms of the style, I would say in general his style is fantasy, a little bit of surrealism in there. He does do stylistic, androgynous figures, and often the sort of two-dimensional kind of almost like a pattern effect of the painting. Reminds me a little bit of Klimt. Also the figures remind me a little bit of Modigliani. But he's obviously his own man. But yeah, these sort of, it's almost like looking at an illustration or a pattern on a plate. He did decorate ostrich eggs as well, and I think he has done some ceramics as well. Certainly some of his designs seem to be on ceramics. So yeah, he's quite an interesting guy. I think these two women may be in a drug-addled state. We may have some poppy seeds, some opium poppies around. They certainly seem to be half asleep, and when you look at it for a long time, they seem to be following you around in a slightly uncomfortable way. But I like the colours. I think it's beautifully rendered and it's absolutely beautifully framed. So, wow, what a lovely thing.
Science! on the art of being clever with me.
Hello, my name is Professor Hertz van Rentel, and you may be wondering why I am wearing a bright red cowboy jacket. Well, when you find out, I would like to know the answer as well. I am here to give you a lesson in the finer arts of science. What we are going to do today is mix up some chemicals and then apply them to this wood. And when they are applied to the wood and the chemicals mix together and then it dries out, then what we are left with is a nice hard repaired surface, and you will not be able to tell that there was ever any chemicals involved. If you believe that, you will believe anything. Anyway, what we are going to do first is use a glue gun and some plastic strip. And I will attach the plastic strip to the end here to make a barrier so that our chemicals do not run off and dribble all over the floor. But first, I have to wait until my little glue gun is ready. Please do not ask which accent I am using, because I'm quite sure it will change as we go along. So, as you can see, we have quite a lot of work to do. But for this experiment, we are going to try to repair this section here as a test. And my glue gun is ready and it is dribbling everywhere. Bearing in mind I have never done this before, we will find out if it will in fact work. Oopsie, that was a little premature. Now that that is attached, we move on to stage 2.
Apologies if there's a bit of a wind sound coming on the microphone. It's because it's breezy. But I've got the what do you call it? What is it? It's the step. It's the bottom step. The cut's all at a bit of a funny angle. So where I started, it's gone in a bit on this side. So I'm going to sand it down and try and even it out a bit, and then I can start the process of giving it a curved edge, because that's what the original one looked like. So I want to sort of recreate that. Nobody wants a sharp corner to a step, especially if you might be going up in your socks or something. It'll hurt. So I'll just see what I can do with the sander. I'm outside because this sander equally is really annoying. It blows dust everywhere. So I can't really use that indoors anymore. So we'll see how it goes. Using the belt sander, I started at 40 grit sandpaper, which quickly rounded off the edges of the step. We have an escaped spaniel. So I've gone over all the edges with the belt sander, and they're roughly rounded off. It's a very rough and ready step at the moment. So my next plan is I'll probably try with one of the other sanders inside, and I'll have this on a flat surface instead of my little jig, and try and just go up through the grades of sandpaper to make it nice and smooth, to get rid of all the I don't know if you can focus, if the camera focus on them, and you get very rough grooves with lower grit sandpaper, and so I'll see how beautiful I can make it. This little detail mouse sander was a very welcome gift from our friends Alex and Paul. Once I'd sanded a nice round edge to the step, I moved on to the top surface with the orbital sander. I took my time and moved up through the different grades to 180 grit. This leaves a wonderfully smooth surface, but not so polished as to impede the absorption of any wood stain, varnish or oil I might want to apply later. The existing stairs are aged and darkened from varnish and wear. Whilst I want the new step to match in, I don't want to lose the beautiful wood grain. I haven't fully decided what to do yet. I'll probably darken it a little, but allow it to stand out from its fellow stairs. The moment that perhaps none of you have been waiting for.
So the value of this piece, well, the value is somewhat in the eye of the beholder. I've seen some auction prices for some of Toller's work, and it does vary hugely. A print could be sold for $100, but I understand that some of his work has gone for 7,000 Canadian dollars, about 5,000 US dollars. And I don't know whether this one would be one that someone else would really covet. But I love the colours. Some of his work, or quite a lot of it, is more primary colours and quite a lot of black outlines and things, whereas this one is it's very delicate, and it's got some pink in there, and I'm afraid I'm a little bit on the pink spectrum rather than really primary red. And so of all the ones I've seen of his, this is my favourite, and I must have looked at 50 or so just quickly flicking through, so I really like it. I mean, it's beautifully framed. So I suspect it is an original. It could be worth a couple of $1,000s to somebody, or it might not attract a buyer, I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely worth having. Very glad to have it.
Okay, so sanding this down is going really well, generally speaking. I've got a little bit of a lip where the two bits of wood join here, so I'll just have to keep working that to try and sand it down nice and flat. But generally we're getting there. So why I've got an iron and some water is because there are a couple of dents in the surface of the wood, and what I'd like to do is see if I can make them pop back out. And so the way I'm led to believe to do that is we get a bit of towel like that, and we pour plenty of water on, especially over the affected area, and let that soak in so it's really quite wet. And then we have the iron on hot. And the idea is that we force steam into the wood, thereby expanding the crushed wood fibres back out, and then we have lovely smooth wood again. But I won't know if it works unless I try. It might not work first time, so I might need to do it a few times. But if I do it for about 30 seconds each go and see if it just starts to pop back out. Do you know, I think it's come up a little bit. So I might let that, I'm going to try this one, maybe put a little bit more water on. Again, I think this one has popped out a tiny bit, but not completely. Definitely not completely. Well, I've tried it about 3 times now. I think there was a little bit more success on the really small one than there was on the large one. I think it's come up a tiny bit, but really just a very small amount. So it's not really worked. So I'll just have to keep sanding it down until I'm happy with it. Ultimately, the only person who's really going to know it's there is me. And otherwise, it's getting there. We're getting there. So, fingers crossed it won't be too long before I'm putting this in place.
So, welcome to Hertz's kitchen, where we will be cooking up our chemical ingredients. So here we have epoxy resin, and here we have the hardener. So I'm going to mix these by weight. If I can get the lid off. But I can't. Damn you! I will have to go and get a tool. Easy when you know how. I hope it's not a hard lump at the bottom. So I have gone for 150 150 grams of the epoxy resin, which means at a ratio of 100 to 30, we need... I may have to go and work this out. 45 grams of hardener. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, is where the magic happens. Here we have a cup of magic ingredient. It is, in fact, sawdust. Well, it's actually mostly woodworm poo, but I suppose it's the same thing. And I am going to mix it in and create a special blend of what I like to call stuff. A pinch of woodworm poo here, a pinch of woodworm poo there. Ugh. I have poo on my hands. Poop hands! Poop hands! It certainly looks like poo. Here is the brown goop. Perhaps it's time to try the mixture out. To the workshop! So, now we will spread on the resin that is mixed with the woodworm poo and hope that it sticks like... Well, you get the idea. Well, I would love to say that it's a perfect chocolatey brown color, but it rather looks like somebody's had a bad night. So, this has been our experiment for the day. Why have I gone French? We will let this dry and we will come back and see it another day. Until then, my little friends, toodle peep.
So we've just taken delivery of 6 Louis XV style chairs, and this is supposedly dates from about 1900. It's a table to go with the chairs, and then this is a portmanteau, so somewhere to hang our coats and our umbrellas in the hall, probably in our house rather than the gîte, if you see what I mean, separating the chateau into 2 parts, because we don't have anywhere to hang our coats at the moment. It's a good fit to the style of the decorative woodwork in the hall, but has arrived with one hook broken and another hanging by a thread. It seems I've given Rory some more work to do. Sorry, Rory. So it's fine, isn't it?
Looks lovely. Looks in very good condition.
Good.
How old is it?
Well, they said they think it's 1900.
It's very good top for 1900. 125 years.
It is 24 hours or so after I played the stinky poo-poo resin, and now it has mostly dried. So I will take off this plastic strip. And then I can pull off the glue. I think we can call this a success.
Thank you for watching this week, and please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.